posted that clip online, and there were so many people that were like, oh my God, I'm stuck in this cycle. Like, this is me. I needed to hear this. I'm so sick of doing all this stuff. And I was like, wow. Like, I thought that was just, I mean, I had noticed it and I had heard it in all my peer group, but it was very different to have people that I've never met or talked to one-on-one say the same thing.
What you are revealing is really, I think, a result of genuine conversation.
Yes.
Right? I think there's so much of that is missing from content these days. Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Julian.
And I'm Kirsten. And today we're talking about our latest creative project, Money on the Table, season 3.
Yes.
But first, I just want to shout out everyone who has checked out episodes 1 and 2, which just came out, and left your comments and your feedback and your shares. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's like really affirming to me and special. And I admit I have a bad habit of not reading the comments, but I did with this one. And I don't know, it just felt good. It felt like we created something where our intentions actually matched the output. Yeah. You know, sometimes there's that gap where it's like, I meant for it to do this, but it did that.
Yeah.
And with this, it feels like it's doing what it's exactly supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I don't have that habit. I have the opposite habit where I read the comments and then I check for more. So I'm more so the obsessive one when it comes to making sure everything's straight. Because, you know, like, we created it. And like, I'm an artist, I'm sensitive about my shit. And so I'm always looking for feedback in some way or in one way or another. What I also look for is insight into the viewing experience. So like, I want to see how people are watching it, which is a little harder to do. So like, you know, are they watching it on their phones? Is it a laptop? And YouTube gives you some views of that. But like, what I particularly love is when I see people, someone last night, I think it was Lucretia, I believe, and she posted something of like, you know, just watching it like on her TV.
I love that.
Which is different from like watching it on your laptop or like on your phone. And that's what we wanted, to your point, right?
Yes.
So that to me is like really, really validating. And it was like Saturday night too. It was like Saturday night watching Money on the Table.
Because ain't nothing else on.
Shout out to MK. MK was like, hey, you know, everybody's out here talking about Bridgerton. Meanwhile, I'm watching Money on the Table.
Shout out like, to MK.
So
my accountability buddy.
Yeah. So that kind of spirit is what I really, really love. And that kind of feedback is what I really look forward to.
Yeah. So today's episode is a little bit more about the series if you're new here, and this season and what we hope to accomplish, which we've already kind of given some away.
Yeah.
But let's just start with a little bit of background. So why don't you tell the origin story, where Money on the Table even came from?
I don't really remember the actual origin. I know the spirit of it, and maybe that's the same thing. But I remember we started in 2020. I feel like the idea was probably brewing years before then, and I may have just passively mentioned it to you. But what I do know is that, like, I'm a huge fan. We are huge fans of Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace. We love a lot of the work that kind of came out of his camp. We love a lot of the work that future shows that were clearly inspired by No Reservations and Parts Unknown were doing over the last couple of years, and to a certain degree, like even still now. And I just remember thinking years, I mean, this is before we launched the season 1 in 2020, like, wow, what if there was a television show that captivated and inspired people in the same way? Because like, we went to places specifically because we saw it, right? We saw it. We were inspired. It looked amazing. We did it. And we felt validated in that decision. There was no question about whether or not we felt good about it. And that's where the ball started rolling, was like, wow, how do we take this idea, financial independence, this lifestyle, this way of thinking, this way of investing, this way of having healthy, comprehensive, honest conversations about money, and not make it boring? Because for the fact of the matter is, like, most of the financial content that we see out there is very cookie cutter and just flat out boring. And so we wanted to find a way to kind of make it edutational. What do they call it? Edutainment?
Which you speak French.
No, but you know, they call it edutainment, right? Like, you know,
LeVar Burton came up with that term.
Exactly. And we talked about that. We talk about the impact that like shows like Reading Rainbow had on literacy rates and inspiring people to read. And it's not just straight down the middle, I'm going to read this book to you. It's like, nah, man, dress
Tell
it
the
up.
story.
Tell a
Yeah.
story, make it fun, get people looking forward to the next one. And so that's really what we wanted to do. And it was a bit of a no-brainer given my background with food and, being able to say, hey, well, this is just how I think. And so I think we can just add this culinary layer to it, because at the end of the day, people will watch food TV and just have it on in the background all day.
All day.
It doesn't even matter. They're not really watching it, but it's just going. And so I started thinking like, wow, if we could do that with money and just get people thinking about it and just these little micro learning opportunities in this beautiful way, I think we could actually just further embed that message into the hearts and minds of viewers. And so that's kind of the origin story, if you will. And now we're on our third season, 4 years later.
Yes. Yeah, our unofficial motto is come for the food, stay for the conversation, because you're absolutely right. There's something about food and food television that just transcends. I actually read an article yesterday or the day before that, and it was about this guy, and he was in hospice with his dad. And he was talking about the role of a hospice chef because, hospice is kind of like a waiting room for all involved, but the goal is to keep people comfortable. And so he was telling the story of his dad, and he said, even though my dad had a loss of appetite in the last days, he never lost his interest in food. And he started asking for cooking shows to be shown on television. And one day they were making this trifle and he asked for one and the nurse made it happen with the chef. And he took like one little bite of it, but like it was that special to him. It really is a universal language. And it has this way of taking people's guards down and just really listening for the message. You're not listening for instruction when you're trying to eat. You are there for the conversation. You're there for the connection. And that's what we're trying to build. We knew that food had the ability to do that, and it would be the perfect thing to build a concept on and really kind of explore edutainment in the form of like money and personal finance.
Yeah, you talk about food TV, travel television does the same thing. And so that's what we try to do and take it up another level in season 2, right? Season 3, this season that just launched a couple of days ago, is one where we're kind of bringing it back to the source a little bit, our home, the comfort of our kitchen table, and the ability to kind of just craft the menu and think about exactly what we wanted to make. And I remember for a while, there was an attempt to almost write a menu that was inspired by the topic.
Yeah.
And I got a little hard after a while, but I was like, I could do it.
You still did a pretty good job this season.
I did. I doubt a lot of people got the message. It didn't really nail that home, but I'm sure there's someone out there that kind of gets it and was like, oh, I see what they were doing.
The shakshuka was perfect.
The shakshuka is a perfect example, right? Yeah. It's like and it's real. Like this is something that we look forward to. I think we even mentioned it in the episode. I remember those moments in Thailand where we had a savory breakfast and the light bulb went on. Like, that's interesting. They do things differently in Southeast Asia. And so I remember when we were in Brooklyn, that was the first time I had shakshuka, and I was reminded,
it's delicious.
A sit down, hot, slow savory breakfast. Coffee tastes differently when it's not in that nasty mug that still tastes like 3 years ago. That break room coffee just don't quite hit the same as the coffee that you brew at home. And I'm gonna just take this opportunity to poop on anybody that's a K-Cup fan. When I first met you, you were a K-Cupper.
I was. They're bad for the environment.
They're also bad for your tongue. It's terrible. It's not great coffee. Some of them are good. I rock with the Nespresso.
Oh, those aren't real K-Cups,
which isn't an actual K-Cup, but that same
K-Cup is pet
mechanism is there. But all of that to say, I think as creatives, we wanted to take it another step and say, if we're having a conversation and we're trying to make this point, can we also hammer home that point through food, through the menu, or through some kind of cooking technique or ingredient or something like that? And to your point, I think to certain extents, we did it. We probably hit a bullseye on some and probably just outside, but still in the range on others. But really, this is just an attempt to fulfill the true mission, the broader mission of our business in Rich and Regular, which is to inspire better conversations about money.
Yes.
And I think food is such an easy, captivating mechanism, a universal language, if you will. It's the kind of thing that I think hopefully gets the job done.
Yeah. in season 1, we cooked all of the meals at home, but not by design, not by intention. Our plan was to do what we did in season 2, which was venture out to all of these restaurants, but it was right in the middle of quarantine. And so we got creative and brought the crew inside of our home to cook all the meals at home.
I remember
And
that.
then for season 2, we flipped it and everything was back open again. So we went on the road and visited all of these small businesses, these Black-owned restaurants, a number of different just local favorites, and did interviews with our friends, which was fun. So in season 3, we're back at home because now the restaurant industry has kind of flipped. And whereas in season 2, they were struggling, now they're booming with record levels of revenue, and things are expensive outside. And so we brought it back home. Part of it was a cost conscious thing, but part of it was just because we knew that's where the best conversations about money could take place. We could take our time, we could sit there, we could linger, we could laugh, we could cry if we needed to. And while you can do that in a restaurant, it's just much more natural at home.
Yeah, I think this season and the timing just called for what we did.
Yeah.
Right. I think there will be an opportunity where we can revisit that, where we can get back on planes, travel the country, travel the world. I may have said this before. I mean, our plans for season 2 were to go international.
They sure were.
That got poo-pooed. We didn't quite get the participation that we wanted with a few other partners, but like we wanted to go abroad. There were tons of people who have the same ambitions and messages, but we just weren't really able to do that. And so all of that to say, season 3 is exactly where we are. And I love it. I'm glad we made the decision to stay at home. But you mentioned that one of the other things that kind of made previous seasons different was that we had a crew.
Yeah.
And I remember the reactions the first time because going, back in 2020, which again, I'm still kind of struggling with the fact that that's 4 years ago.
Only 4 years ago.
Only 4 years ago.
It feels like it was 10 years ago.
But back in 2020, we had a lead cinematographer, Joelle. We had 2 basically,
audio and sound.
beat cams.
Beat cam and sound.
We have Vontae and Sean. We had another sort of production assistant every now and then. It was like 4 people in the room. And it was a major production. They would bring in lights, they'd set up their cameras, they'd mic us up. And, I'd started prepping the day before, and so that they would show up, and it was an all day thing, right? Like 30-minute episode. And we'd probably shoot from, maybe 10 to maybe 4 or 5. Sometimes it went over.
Yeah. We would leave and go pick up our son while they were still cleaning up.
Yeah.
Like one person would stay back and then the other would go pick up Bo from daycare.
Yeah. But again, that's because setup and testing and like resetting because you want to get a different shot or a different angle. Like it was a major production and we learned a lot in the process. Now in season 3, we did not do any of that. No. We did not outsource a single thing. Everything that you see is work that we created. All the mistakes, all the things that we got right, ultimately I think is something that we're really, really, really proud of. And we saw that coming. We saw that coming, I think, right around last year as we started thinking about our development. And, when I just think about the creative process and lessons learned, even outside of this, I think, if there's one thing I would imagine others can kind of take away from that, or what I would want them to take away from that, is to be clear. Like in a matter of 3 years, we went from like absolutely needing and these are like professional videographers, like guys that have like HBO credits, Netflix credits, like you name it. Like we brought the big guns who are, I don't want to say low key doing us a favor, but like it was a collaborative.
Yeah, it was a
effort.
creative project.
It was like, I'm going to give you creative freedom.
Yeah.
We're going to sort of lead the way. Obviously, it's our IP, our idea, all that kind of stuff. And we paid them, of course. But like it was a shared responsibility. And there were good parts of that and there were bad parts of that. What we wanted to do this time around was really challenge ourselves as creators, as creative entrepreneurs, to be able to say, hey, if we want to cut this or if we want a quick and immediate turnaround, we want to be able to do this and craft it. If we want to have the creative freedom to say, you know what, this approach for episode 1, I want it to be different than what I do in episode 3. And I don't want to have to explain it to anyone because the idea came to me in the middle of the night and I need to be able to see this idea in front of me tomorrow morning, not 3 days from now after hopefully explaining something to someone and then getting something back and then making the decision around, all right, is that what I thought it was? And having to pay more money. And, I think if there's one takeaway, whether you are interested in doing this kind of work or not, it's that at first things are really, really hard. Like it's no different than like when you decide that you're trying to get that summer body or whatever it is, right? You're going to start working out. That first workout is going to be painful.
I don't think I can do this.
The first burpee is awful. God awful. You hate yourself. You beat yourself up. And it is going to take every amount.
The third and the fourth one are terrible too.
Oh, yeah.
But by
it doesn't
the
go away.
15th.
If you stick with it, by the 15th, you will notice something. You will be like, I used to not be able to do 2 and then drop dead. Now I can do 2 and I'm like, I just need a break. And that's progress. Yes. And you just need to build on that. By the time you get to the 50th one, the 75th, the 100th one, you're laughing at the fact that it used to take you so long to do the first one.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we've been able to do, not even just with Money on the Table, but with the podcast and a lot of the other creative projects that we've done. You have to just keep going. You have to learn from the rough starts, learn to accept them, learn how to read them, and apply the messages to the second, the third, and just keep on going. And I'm telling you, you will be blown away by your own progress if you do that in whatever it is that you do.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I think if anything, 2023 taught us that our ability and more importantly, our willingness to monitor our expenses, cut where necessary, slow down the burn rate is really a superpower. We talk about it a lot in terms of our personal lives, in terms of the decisions we make around grocery shopping and self-care. We don't talk about it as much with business. While this wasn't a total cost-driven experiment, it helped us understand like where the cuts feel deeper versus where they don't feel like anything at all because of the advances in technology. And to your point, because of the number of reps, the better you get at it, the better you get at self-editing, the better you get at understanding how difficult that cut is going to be in post-production.
Exactly.
The more you know when to restart or when to clarify what you were trying to say, or even just the feeling of knowing that you didn't land your point the way that you wanted to.
Exactly.
Like we had the time and the freedom to experiment with all of that. I'm not saying we had all the time in the world, because to be clear, we were filming this while Bo was at school. We knew we had exactly until 2:25 when we needed to meet the bus. And then we would jump right back into cleanup or whatever it was. But I think in film, they call this character development, seeing a character progress over time and learn new things. You know, we all love Abbott Elementary and how Janine has developed her character, grown up in front of our eyes. Now she's back in the classroom. I think of our journey the same way. In life, it's just called adulting. In entrepreneurship and self-employment, it's called a promotion. Like that's what it feels like in this world. And I'm happy that we have this vehicle that other people can watch and see as a means of like connection with our audience.
Yeah. So what do you think about, there've only been 2, right? So let's talk a little bit about season 3, what people can expect. We're not going to give it away.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to spoil
Try not to give it away. And if not, we'll cut it out. But like, give me some early reactions, how you feel about episode 1. Because I felt like, I'll be honest with you, I felt like you were a little nervous, watching.
Yeah.
We all deal with it in different ways, right? But when it goes live, I felt like you were like hiding, like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
God.
Yeah. I woke up and it was launch day and I went straight to the sauna, which is my happy place.
I gotta go. I'm gone.
I was like, happy launch day. I will see you at 10 o'clock.
I was like, okay.
After the first hour. But yeah, like I was surprised about episode 1. So if you haven't seen it, in episode 1, it's called A Life with Fewer Regrets. And we're catching people up on where we've been. And we just start talking about who we think we'd be if we had not left corporate America when we did. And we're telling stories. And I mentioned this thing about what I've noticed in my peer group, which is that they have this really high standard for healing, and basically how self-care has become this huge expense category that rivals housing and transportation and food. Like it's just kind of taken over people's budgets and lives. And I'm talking about this from a personal experience, because even for me, it's been the slipperiest of slopes, especially for middle-aged women. Like it doesn't matter if you're married, single, if you got kids, if you're child-free, like there is somebody always out there promising you this state of nirvana if you just buy this thing or do this thing. And so I'm just talking about it. And it was like an aside in a much larger conversation, but we posted that clip online and there were so many people that were like, oh my God, I'm stuck in this cycle. Like, this is me. I needed to hear this. I'm so sick of doing all this stuff. And I was like, wow. Like, I thought that was just, I mean, I had noticed it and I had heard it in all my peer group, but it was very different to have people that I've never met or talked to one-on-one say the same thing.
Yeah. I don't have that experience. I wish I did. And again, I hate to try to add a sort of a gender filter to this, but like I don't have a similar experience with men. And I think to a certain extent we talked about that. I don't know if we cut it or not, but there is a version of this that I don't quite see that many men kind of cutting back on whatever it is, the things that they do. And we actually will get into that a little bit in episode 2. But I do think that part of what you are revealing is really, I think, a result of genuine conversation.
Yes.
Right. I think there's so much of that is missing from content these days. And that actually goes back to the origin. I mean, it's one of the things that I really wanted to make sure we did when I originally pitched the idea. And I was like, most of the content is people talking straight to camera. Hi, my name is Julian.
And educational.
Welcome to our channel. Make sure you sign up and subscribe. And I was like, yeah, there's a place for that. Right. But there's also just a level of impact that is had when people just feel like a fly on the wall. And that is, by the way, an entire corner of the internet where you're watching real conversations, and it's emotionally charging is what I'll say, right? Like it can be tense. It can be really, really funny. Like it's different when you're watching people having a real conversation versus they're clearly just like reading a script, or you're waiting for the thing that they're getting ready to say. Like this, there's a freedom to that I think people enjoy watching, but I think also that really validates their experiences in a way that a direct line does not allow you to do. So if you were to just flat out create a video and say, here's what I think about the self-care industry, and I think you should stop spending that much money, nobody cares.
Yeah.
But when you say things like, oh, man, I really feel like, is it just me? Like maybe it's not, that sort of natural back and forth, I think, opens up certain conversations in a way. And I think gives people permission to call themselves out, or at least consider an idea that they likely may not have considered before. Now, episode 2 was a little different. And this is one that I was really looking forward to the reactions, because it's a topic that we scratched the surface on a couple of times before. And I've come to learn, having done this a couple of years now, that you can't always rely on like numbers to dictate whether or not something struck a chord.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, knowing us and the way that we speak and the kinds of conversations that we have, sometimes silence is the greatest indicator.
Yes.
Discomfort is the greatest indicator to say, yeah, people aren't ready for it. They're going to watch it. They saved it, right? There's a big difference between a view and a save. A save was like, oh shit. I suspected that this was an issue. I can't digest it right now.
Yeah.
Give me a minute, give me some time. And then hopefully we can lure them in with like steak sizzling and like, making a fresh lemon vinaigrette. It's like, no, come for the steak. Let's have this real conversation about like the rise and the prevalence of gambling, right?
Yeah.
Because I think what it did for a lot of people is there's basically two kinds of people. There's going to be the person who's like, oh, I knew I'm just going to say husband. I'm sure it works mostly, both ways, but I'm going to say husband. I knew he was, he did it. It was fun, but I didn't realize it was such like a massive, massive industry. Like one of the few industries that saw record levels of growth over the last couple of years.
Oh, man.
And I was just kind of sharing it from my perspective as a casual sports fan. Like I'm not a hardcore sports fan. I'm a casual sports fan. And it seems like in the last couple of years, every other sponsor has been like a gambling or Prize Picks or FanDuel kind of thing. And I'm not poo-pooing on people who gamble, but like whenever you see record growth, like that's real money.
Yeah.
That's real money going from the pockets of people's, personal checking and saving, that's going into these businesses, right?
Yes.
In the hopes that I'm going to put in 5 and get back 20. And it's happening so much more often now. We were just kind of saying like, yeah, maybe we should explore this a little bit.
Well, what we're really exploring is how that shows up in your money, because it's one thing to hear about an issue on the news. It's another thing to get down to the emotion that it's tapping on and figuring out like, how does that show up in my budget? And what we were talking about was luck. We were talking about how many people are planning to get lucky.
Yes.
And that's not how luck works.
Yes.
And I think that's what's special about this season is that in every episode, we're swapping vulnerabilities, we're swapping, insights and stories and observations, but we're also talking about like, here's how that manifests, regardless of whether you gamble or not. Here's how this manifests, this feeling of hoping to get lucky manifests in your budget, because it does, right? When you can't figure out where the leak in the bucket is, it's typically around one of these things. Even in episode 3, we're talking about enough and defining enough. And we're swapping stories about how as children, we experience something where we broke something or ruined something and it created an unexpected expense for our parents, or even for me as an adult. I was struggling to deal with unexpected expenses. And we landed on the fact that the reason people have such a hard time defining enough is because of that feeling.
Yes.
It's because of your inability to deal with the discomfort of an unexpected expense. That's why you always want more.
Yep.
That's why you think you need more. But like, it comes out over the course of this meal and this episode. And I look back and I think every week we sit on these mics and we tell people that you don't have to buy this. You're not broken. The answer is within you. You can get creative. But there's something about this medium, there's something about this format that makes people actually believe it.
Yes.
And that feeling is so special to me. Like, I just want to hold it. And I'm glad that we took the creative leap that we did, because I don't know that I felt it the same way in other seasons, because we had that middleman that could pick and choose, and not saying that in a negative way, but when you have a team of people who are filming and editing and producing the final product, you don't always get to sit in there and say, no, keep that line in. No, that pause is necessary. That word stumble needs to be there, because they need to know that I'm trying to figure it out as I'm talking to you.
Exactly.
Just like you are.
Yeah. They're there, to your point. Like, they may look at that screw up as an unclean version.
Correct.
Like, no, actually, that's the most honest reflection of how I feel about that thing. So add the stutter, add it, leave it in there, because that is how people talk.
That's how people talk.
You know what I mean? And so you need to leave. That's not an error. It's like a natural seasoning on
it's like
language.
A burnt in.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. Look at you. That's like might be your first culinary reference.
Come on now.
Ever.
It's the hat.
I like
it's
that.
It's the hat.
It is like a burnt end. I like that. Okay. I'm hungry now.
Was there an episode that like really resonated with you? You edited them, so you have a very different perspective of what you think will resonate with the audience and what resonated with you personally.
Yeah, I don't know how to talk about it though without giving it away.
Oh, okay.
But there were two in particular that that really struck with me. And again, I haven't done this work for a little while now. I've learned enough about my own creative process. Going back to your point, like when you start something, you have an idea and then you thought about it, and I'm going to do what I envisioned, and you're locked sort of in that because the idea is like in your head and you just want to get it out. And then you get better through that process, which in some cases unlocks other abilities. And so you did start to try things a little differently. By the time we got to around episode 3, I think you even said you noticed a difference, like in episode 3. And we typically notice a difference even when we're shooting it, that we've hit a little bit of a rhythm and we're much more fluent. And I can definitely see from the amount of tape there is, it's like, yeah, like it's a much more compact conversation. We know exactly what we want to say. And it's like a tennis match in a way. So yeah, all that to say that there are a couple, 2 in particular, that I think are particularly emotionally charged and as a result moving for people. If you watched season 1, there was one particular episode where my mother joined us for dinner, and till this day, and I think we even talk about it in one of these episodes, but till this day, people see me and they say, yo, that conversation was crazy. Like I felt like I was watching you talk to mama, and that's exactly what we wanted people to do, right? It was like, look, I've been telling you that you need to have this conversation, this uncomfortable conversation about your mom. And I'm tired of telling you, I'm just going to show you what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And it's not conclusive. It is uncomfortable, but you have to kind of have it. And then you need to have another one and build on it and build on it. And that's what people did. They would turn it on and then use that and say, hey, mom, look at this. Isn't that funny? Wow, I can't believe you. Hey, quick question. And it would inspire a conversation about money and caregiving and expectations and retirement that you likely may not have been able to have. And so we're hoping to do that with several other conversations. Not all of them. There are no guests this season. So in case anybody was thinking my mom makes a return, she does not. But we do tackle that conversation, I would say, on the other side of the coin, now that we are a couple more years in. And again, I would say as big bro, big auntie, cousin, I don't know who's
Why
watching
I
or
gotta be an
listening.
auntie? I can't be
You
big sis.
somebody's auntie.
I am
You are a
somebody's
literal
auntie. I'm a
auntie.
proud auntie.
But the point I'm making is that, yeah, like I've got a couple. Do you?
Ooh, I'm not as close to them as you are. I do have some favorites, but I can't say them because they're gonna spoil. They're gonna spoil it.
Yeah, well, we'll watch it together.
Yes.
How about when it goes live, we will turn it on and watch it together as if we weren't there in the room,
right, filming it
when it was being recorded. And I will also say this: I think this went in my head and jumped out. But one of the other benefits of doing it all yourself is, even if you are comfortable, and we were wildly comfortable with the crew that we had on season 1, probably too comfortable. There is footage, by the way. He's been saying he's going to send it to me, but he probably lost it. I might even have it somewhere. But like, we had a flat out argument.
We sure did.
On camera, and they were recording, and I had forgotten I was hot. And we were going at it. Like, it was a real conversation. They were like, no, just take your time, y'all. And he was recording. And I knew he was recording, but I didn't give a bleep. I was like, I just kept on going. And it was real because it was real. And I was like, all right, do we tell him to keep that? And he was like, nah, we probably should.
Yeah.
I would love to see it, though.
I know.
I've never seen it. I would love to see it. All that to say, even if you are close to the camera people, the audio video people, which I think you kind of have to be in order to really create something beautiful and emotional. You still recognize that there's someone else in the room. You know, like, not to, like, this is probably a bit of a stretch, but like, even like with porn, because they say that all the time. Like, if you've ever watched a documentary, I watched a couple documentaries, and they're like, yeah, it's not romantic at all. It's just work, right? They're like, I mean, you really think it's romantic? There are 20 other people in the room. They're like, yeah, no, like, you just can't. Even when you think back to when we did that reality show, right? Like, people have no idea. Like, they just see us two having a conversation with another couple. It's like, there were like 6 other people in the room. There were people outside looking inside. Like, you are basically under a microscope.
You're on set.
You are on a set.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the scene is.
Right.
Whether it is love making or an argument or mourning or a funeral scene where you have to be like incredibly sad. Like, there are 50 people and cameras and mics all around you, and you're fully aware of it.
Yeah. And so the fact that we did it ourselves also gave us the freedom to linger a little longer on a subject, to circle back and say, you know what, I think what you're trying to say is this, and like, decide whether or not we even want to keep the corrective part of the conversation. And so that's what we tried to capture. That's what I think we did capture in season 3. And I think that's part of what makes it really, really special.
All right. So let's talk about what's next.
We're not even done with season 3 yet. You're trying to talk about what's next. I'm not even halfway through. What's next is
the rest of the episodes.
Season 3.
But then after that,
vacation.
Well, yes. And then after that,
we got a big project that we're looking forward to.
I would like to do another season.
I can't wait to launch that project. We're working with someone based out of California, and that's going to be a really cool project.
You know, once I had my first child, once I had Bo, I knew I was one and done. Like, I fought it for a long time, but I kind of knew, like, this is probably it. This is probably it for me. But with this series, I just want to do it over and over again. Like, I really do want to do
I want to be
a
old
season
and
4.
I'll take it a step further. I've had this vision. I don't know where we were, but I remember thinking, like, oh, yeah, like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, I could keep doing this literally until I'm... I ain't but I was like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I be 50 something years old still doing this, doing these kinds of conversations? Like, if that's what I like, it's no different than a show that's been on the air for 10 years. Right?
100%.
To me, it's no different.
I want to bring back guests, but I want the intimacy of a home setting. So we'd have to figure that out. Like, I don't know that I would want all of the conversations to be restaurant driven. Like, if we had a guest, maybe we do one meal at home, one meal at a restaurant. I don't know, but I do like the dynamic of adding guests who can ask different questions or reveal different parts of us,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah, there's a show on Netflix called Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner,
Yeah.
hosted by David Chang, that is probably the best representation of, I shouldn't say the best representation,
One of the
but
representations.
is an example
Yeah.
of something that I think is a really interesting and creative approach to something that we could potentially do.
Yes.
But yeah, we've had these conversations. We will do another series. I don't know when. It might even be this year. I see a world where we're doing special episodes for the holidays, or Juneteenth next year. Well, this was technically Juneteenth. Episode 1 launched on Juneteenth, but it wasn't Juneteenth inspired.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see us doing it as long as possible. I see us having guests. I see us traveling more and doing it.
I also want to do it live.
I want to do it on TV. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I
do want to do it on TV.
Connecting some dots today. And so if there's anyone out there, let me just be clear. Let me be crystal clear, looking straight into the camera. If you're with PBS, we would love to work with you. PBS has a great kind of, I don't want to call it a sub channel, but a sister brand, PBS Food. They have great programming there. But when I think about PBS, I love PBS. I have donated to PBS several times over the years. I have. And I don't give very many donations, but I value
yes, you do.
the program so much. And so, yeah, PBS, people talk about Netflix. That's cool. And
yeah, there's
the
a bunch
mess that
I'm
seeing that comes out on Netflix these days. I'm like, Netflix want me to be messy. They want me to be super messy, and they
yeah, we can't lose the edutainment format.
Yeah, Netflix ain't trying to teach you nothing.
But in the interim, like, TV is very similar to book publishing, where it's a long slog. Like, from production to airing can take a year. It could take 2 years. Like, I also want to figure out how to do this live. I keep thinking about, like, what happens when video becomes the outdated way to communicate. And it's like, we've been fortunate to be able to have dinner with a few of y'all. Like, we did the dining tours for our book tour. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so how do we figure out how to make it happen within this context? It's not like there would be cameras on, but, like, how do we arrange small dinner clubs across the country where you're sitting across someone who's like-minded because they're there. Like, it's not random. It's not like going to a conference where you have to question people's motivations for being there. It would just be a nice dinner where we're discussing a topic. So I still got to figure that out. I think I just need to be bullied into doing it. So I'm looking at the camera and I'm telling y'all, if you want this to happen, tell me so I can at least develop some pilot cities. If you have a restaurant and you want us to come try it there, I'm willing to do that. If you have a topic, if you have a group of 10 friends who would be great for a little pilot, I think it would be a great idea. Like, if you came to dinner with us during the book tour or otherwise, like, tell people how dope it was and let's figure out how to make this happen.
I'll throw this one out there too. This isn't really about ideas or requests, but if there's anyone out there that has other questions, like creative questions, like, how did you do it? How did you do this? Those kinds of things, certain shots, angles, all that kind of stuff. Send us a note. If we get enough of them, what we may do is record it like a Q&A kind of thing. Because we talked about doing that, but that was like contingent on actually getting requests. Like, I'm not going to create a whole body of work if nobody's asking for it. So if y'all are asking for it and you've got those questions about how it's actually done technically, in camera work and audio and effects and food and all that stuff, shoot us a note. Until then, thank you again to everyone that has already subscribed to our YouTube channel. YouTube, is such a special community, and I almost feel like undeserving in a way, because like it's like its own unique world, and we've actually spent more time on other networks, on other channels, but I really I look forward to and spending more time on YouTube and like finding other ways to connect with people and leveraging that platform and that community there. If you aren't on our YouTube channel, like, go ahead and do that right now. You're probably listening to this. I'm willing to bet there are some people who didn't even know that we had a YouTube channel, or probably didn't realize that this podcast is also recorded in video and you could watch it on YouTube. So if that is you, do yourself a favor, do us a big favor, please. Head over to YouTube. If you have a Gmail account, you can automatically just go ahead and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it gives us a bit of a boost, more reach, larger audience. And it'll also help you, because that means that YouTube and Google will serve up more content like ours into your feed through its algorithm. And so all that to say, season 3 is live. We're proud of it. We are happy that we are able to do it this year the way that we did it. The response has been amazing. We're looking forward to, we have still more responses coming in. We have 4 more episodes, I think, that are rolling out between now and the end of July. And yeah, more good stuff to come.
Yes. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. We've asked for a lot of favors, but I'm going to ask for one more. If you like what you heard, let us know by leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform or leave a comment below to keep the conversation going. We will see y'all next week. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.